to writing seminar papers and all of that. Of course, this is on the graduate level or maybe like senior level seminar courses. So the first thing for writing, figure out your process. For me, I recently learned that my process is really writing. Some people's process is to do an extensive outline. Other people's process comes with doing something of it like an annotated bibliography. Another woman I heard wrote down her notes or whatever it is that she was trying to say, her different notes on cards, like on note cards, and then separated them into groups depending on the chapter or the argument or whatever. Whatever your process is, you have to figure it out. Of course, that comes with time. Maybe you already know it, maybe you don't, but you have to figure out your process. So we had to do a first draft of our thesis in November. I did not start until October. Okay, so we had to present it, right? Everybody had to present a different week. I didn't start until October, so I had to kind of start writing sort of by default. But what I realized was the worst mistake you can make, and two mistakes people make, is number one, they research, think about it, and never write. Or number two, they do write, they get a few edits, you know, maybe it's a lot of edits that's cutting their work up, and they're like, which we all have to do sometimes, they take a step away from the work, but then they never come back to it because they're so bogged down by all of the changes that they have to make. There's nothing wrong with taking a step back, because trust me, when you get 100 million edits on something that you actually thought was really good, which happened to me a couple of times, your feelings are hurt and you're like, I just don't know what to do, and but you have to come back to it. Like, you have to get back to writing, you have to get back to figuring out, okay, sifting through the dirt, sifting through what worked, what didn't for your paper, all of that good stuff. So write. And that also comes with, if you have some time, doing something like an informal blog is really, really useful, because the more you write, the more practice, writing is a craft, and the more practice you get, the better off you'll be. I have a Tumblr, so it's a girly girl academic world, Tumblr.com, and I'll leave a link for one of the posts I did, and I don't do a lot of writing on it, but every once in a while I feel so inclined, I'll write something. Of course, that's informal writing, but any type of writing you do just helps to keep your mind working, and again, that's the process that works for me too. So any kind of writing you do is a craft, learn it. Okay, so that leads me to number 3. I would definitely suggest that even as you're reading scholarly articles and books, maybe I'll do this already, but make sure that you're not just looking at what it is they're producing, and Dr. Savage made me very aware of this last semester, but make sure that you're looking at how they're writing. How are they producing knowledge? How are they coming to their conclusions? Professor Heather Williams, who teaches my race and racism class, who is brilliant, by the way. Every professor here is brilliant, but she asks the most probing questions. Like, if whatever surface answer you give her, she's gonna probe you and make you dig deeper than what you thought. But she said something really good today about writing, which was just that make sure that you qualify statements. If you say something like gentrification or diaspora, or for me, when I asked the question about activism, right? How do you define activism? Make sure that when you're writing, you don't just throw those statements in there. And y'all, I do this all the time. Globalization and transnationalism, make sure that you're like explaining, there's a comma and you're explaining what comes after. I thought that was a really good piece of advice, little small piece of advice today. Okay, so that's number 3. Make sure you're paying attention to people's writing, because that can help you. Number 4, give yourself some time limits. Say, okay, this is the amount of time that I'm going to do things in. It may or may not actually happen. Y'all know how it goes. We're in graduate school. But at least I think if you give yourself a time limit, and not just the deadline that the paper is doing, but like a time limit for, okay, this is when the first draft will be due. That's kind of what I was doing when I was saying I gave myself a week to research, a week to get it done. Then you also give yourself some wiggle room for if something happens. Like, and if you choose not to lie to you, then you can say, okay, ideally I want to have this done in a week, but I know that I'm going to play around and I'm going to do a whole bunch of stuff, and I really won't get this paper done or this research done for 2 weeks. So if I give myself this deadline, it really gives me this amount of time. You see, like, give yourself time limits. I think that's really important. And the next thing, keep the argument always at the forefront of your mind. Another mistake that I always make is that I ain't gonna say we all do it. You can forget your argument, and it may be a really good point you're making, but like, does it align with the argument that you're trying to make? So I think it's really important to keep your argument at the forefront of your mind, even if that means keeping it hot. Like, what I like to do is highlight my thesis statement, even if it changes several times as I'm writing, because I told you guys that's my process. Highlight my thesis statement and refer back to it as need be, because if you don't, you get all off on tangents. And y'all, when you're writing 20 pages, 40 pages, 60 pages, 80 pages, on and on and on, you have no trouble going off on tangents. So if you keep your thesis, if you keep what it is that you're trying to prove at the forefront of your mind, I think that's extremely helpful and useful as well. And then finally, don't be so hard on yourself. It's a process, and you got to learn how to do it. It's a practice. It takes a lot of practice. We all know that when you send a graduate course, all we do is sit around and criticize the person, you know, the content, the way they wrote, blah, blah, blah. So even on the highest level with your PhD, some graduate student is going to be sitting around criticizing your writing. So just know that right now you don't have any graduate students criticizing your writing. You're just writing for a professor who will then criticize it. So don't be so hard on yourself, but do try to produce your best work, I think. And I think if you're in graduate school, I'm sure at this point you're invested, so producing your best work. But yeah, you know, it is what it is. Now, my horror story. So I used to, and I really should have my friend Narelle on here because she does so many, she's the ultimate side hustler. She edits people's papers and all that stuff. But I was editing people's papers. I used to do that like freelance, and I put my little, you know, what do you call it, advertisement on Craigslist. Now, you know, when you get on Craigslist, like, you get all types of crazy people. And this one guy, older guy, he was a teacher, I want to say. He was probably, that was first of all probably the worst, just somebody trying to get over on me that I've ever experienced. About that, I just mean, like, he comes to me with this binder of stuff, super unorganized, paragraphs all over the place. Okay, fine, right? We all start from somewhere. But then I start to realize, as I'm trying to help him really outline and think about what it is he wants to say, and the argument is that he's not really here for me to help him edit. He's really here for me to write his paper. Now, y'all, when it comes to like grammar editing, but really like content editing, I am extremely like a stickler for trying to be as thorough, because if I would want somebody to do that with my work, like if I took my work to somebody, I would want them to be really thorough with me and help me to really think things out. So I try to do that with the people that I was helping. This guy, I put all this time, and I think that's what annoyed me the most, I put all this time and effort into really thinking about what it is that he could say and all of this, and come to find out at the end of the day, he really just wanted me to write the paper for him, and then did not want to pay me accurately for even if, which I would never do that, even if he was going to do it. It was just like, or even if I would have said, okay, I'll write the paper. I mean, I was just so aggravated. So anyway, since then, I haven't edited anybody's paper because, number one, I didn't have time, I was working. But number two, I just cannot deal with me being more invested than you are. So anyway, you guys, hopefully those tips helped you in some way. I know that, I don't know what all you guys really wanted. I could go on and on about writing. There are always the mechanics of writing and all of that, but I just thought maybe you guys, if you're at a graduate school level or a senior, senior in college, you know that all that stuff. So I would just give you, I wouldn't insult your intelligence, and hopefully this didn't, and try to give you some stuff that I've learned over my writing experience. So anywho, hopefully you guys enjoy. I will talk with you later. Bye.